Welcome boys. In this video we'll be replacing the engine oil in our 1968 Volkswagen Beetle. I already have the car partially jacked up so that I can slither underneath of here and gain access to our drain plug. It's on this little bigger extended sump down here. So we're going to undo that, let it drain. We also have an oil filter to contend with on this particular model that has been upgraded with a filter. And that's what we're rocking, the Fram PH8A Paul Henry 8 Atom. Okay boys, and to loosen the bolt there, you'll either need 13/16 or 21 millimeter. For this car in particular anyway, I have paint marked it so I know exactly where to put the bolt back so we don't over torque it when we're done there. I have a drain. Okay, got that down. This washer still seems to be in good condition. Okay, go grab my tool and we can get that oil filter off. Assuming you can see over here, but if you can't, I'm just using my giant channel locks to loosen the oil filter. Mostly because I'm too lazy to get my oil filter wrench, which might be downstairs, but it also might be in the garage. And I don't remember which drawer it's in because they haven't been properly labeled with the label maker. Alright, so I'm going to let that do its thing. I'm also going to lower the car back down, that way it's more level, so I can get all the good nasty oil out of it. It's not sitting at any angles. Okay boys, and we will be using the 20W50 to refill it. You need this because you have the flat tappet lifters, and you need something with ZDDP/zinc. So the oil filter, I have pre-filled it, PH8A. As you can see in there, we have oil damn near at the top. It's a little below, but not very. And to make that procedure a little bit easier, I took a quart of that, poured it into this empty quart, and then poured that into there using that funnel, because it fits down in that hole. And if you were wondering how much the filter holds, it's I'd say that's about what, 2/3 of a quart, give or take. You could probably squeeze a little bit more in there, but that's good enough for now. So I already pre-lubed the O-ring. The old O-ring did come off with the old filter. Bam. I've already reaffixed the drain plug exactly where it was according to the marks I made. So that is good. So we're going to thread the filter on, and then we'll move on to the valve covers. We're not going to pour the rest of that in yet because I have to pull the valve covers off for that valve lash, and then I'll explain what we're doing with that. New filter's back on. You only hand tighten it. Do not use a tool to reaffix it because they always seem to tighten, and getting them back off is always a pain in the ass. You always need a tool to get it off, even when you hand tighten it. So under those circumstances, do you use a tool to tighten these? Unless you're very weak. And in that case, if you have to use the tool, make sure it goes back facing exactly the way it was that the old one came off, so you know you're not over torquing it. That's why I always reuse the same oil filter on all my cars. because they're all manufactured the same, so they'll all look and go back in the exact same spot as the old one. Okay, before we go underneath, we have new rubber valve cover gaskets. And new O-rings. So before I put these in, I wanted to see if I had any other O-rings that might fit in either of these kits. Now, both come with these 110s, and I've taken one out, and if you look, they do appear to be the same diameter on the outside. The 110 does seem to fit that. I needed new ones to compare because the old ones are pretty mangled. However, the inside diameter is a little different. This one being skinnier means it's got a bigger outside diameter than these. Might not be that big of a deal since really it's just a bolt that threads through. But also, if you look, it's obviously not as deep. It's not really going to focus with that piece of cardboard there in the way. I don't think. Let me try this. So as you see, the new ones in the kit are much fatter than this. That may or may not make it different if it's all you're going to do, squish it and run it out to keep oil from losing. But I got a shit ton of these, so I guess in a pinch I could probably use these 110s until they deplete their life. Instead of having to buy these every time. But these aren't that expensive, so I guess if you're going to buy the valve covers, gaskets, you might as well buy these. But if not, you got these. And of course that's specifically just for Katie's Beetle, because hers have these. The screw, the washer on the other side, and then the washer squishes down on that O-ring. Whereas on my Beetle, I have these valve covers that just have this little clamp that holds them down with a cork gasket. There are no O-rings or screws in there that affix that valve cover. It's just this clamp's tension that holds those on. Okay, and the cylinders are 1, 2, 3, 4. If you look at the 10, this side you can see the 2 in there under that wire. So that's 2, that's 1. Over here you can see the 4. That's 4. Further away from me is 3. And of course, for valve adjustment, you need your trusty giant 30mm wrench. And we need to make sure that this car is a top dead center cylinder 1. So I have these labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. They go in a clockwise direction here. So we want to be top dead center cylinder 1. And I can see, because this distributor is clear, that it appears to be close to cylinder 4. So if I rotate clockwise, we're now at bottom dead center here, which is cylinder 4. And then once we get to top dead center, alright, there it looks to be. Show you. So for top dead center, you want this mark to be lined up in the split of the case. Kind of hard to see because this is painted, but there's actually a split in the case here. This is one side of the case and this is the other. So when that lines up with that split in the case, I feel like maybe you can. Maybe the light off would help. Yeah, that might help a little better. Now there's no glare. So you can see that the distributor here is touching here, so that's where that spark's going to go. So top dead center on this pulley is cylinders 1 and 3. When bottom dead center is at the split of the case, it will be either 2 or 4. Now if you don't have this clear thing, then you can just pop these off and then pull the cap off, like on my distributor here. So mine's not clear. So if you don't know if it's 1 or 3, Okay, and we can see mine's on its way towards 1, because I have mine labeled the same. And you see top dead center is not too far from the split in the case, so if I was to just rotate this clockwise a little bit more, this would be on its way over to 1. Okay, and as for the valve lash, we need to be at 0.006. So these start from small and go to large. 5's thinner than 6, 6 thinner than 7, so on and so forth in that manner. As the numbers count up, they'll start moving closer and closer to the decimal point. So valve lash should be, on a cold engine, 0.006. So you need to make sure that you're at the top dead center on each cylinder before you start checking, because that's where you need to be to check the valve lash. So cylinder 1, top dead center, valve lash. That's where we're going to go underneath, and I'll show you what we're checking. Okay, and the reason I didn't refill the oil yet is because I have to open these. Now, while I'm doing this, I'll do story time. I'm just going to show you how to do the valve lash adjustment. I'm not actually going to, and that is because prior to draining this oil, I already adjusted the valve lash. But I am going to recheck it, because what happened was we had that show in Effingham, Illinois. On the way back, this one wasn't running so good. I believe it was because of the heat. It was like damn near 100 degrees, 100 and something mile drive. It just wasn't feeling it. But also we had just filled up with Illinois gas. Really the only thing that changed from the day before to that day was the Illinois gas that we put in it, which I suspect has more ethanol in it than our Missouri gas, probably causing us to run lean and therefore hot. Because she even drove with the top down both days. It didn't overheat on the way there, only on the way back. So it wasn't doing so good. We ended up towing it back the rest of the way. It made it about halfway, I'd say. And then because I wanted to make sure it wasn't completely damaged. You know, it started up and drove just fine once it cooled down. But when I checked the valve lash, the cylinders 3 and 4 on the driver's side were fine. They needed adjustment, cylinders 1 and 2 on this passenger side. So I adjusted the valve lash already to 0.006, drove it around for a little bit, it drove just fine. So I decided to change the oil since the oil was probably cooked. And that's why we're changing oil now, even though the thing's probably only got like 1,000 miles on the oil maybe, if that. But it's probably cooked. Once oil gets above 230, it does not lubricate. Loses lubrication properties, and then, like I said, this thing was just, the valves needed adjustment, so. Put the new O-rings. See, these are kind of mangled, which is why I was like, I have no idea what size those are supposed to be. Now that we are off, so this are the 2 valves for cylinder 1. They should have some movement in there where you can kind of hear them hitting the valve stems. And so if we just recheck that with the 0.006, you go right between the rocker here and that valve stem, and you should have a slight drag. And it does go through there, it kind of drags a little. So my experience, every single time I've ever had to adjust the valves on a flat tappet, they're always tight. These valves always tighten themselves up. Now, everybody else I've talked to says they have the opposite problem. The valves are always backing themselves off and loosening themselves, which would make more sense because as you're losing material to wear, you would think there'd be a bigger gap and you would have to tighten them, but I've never had that experience. So I actually set mine a little on the loose side. So how you would do this is you would take your 13, you back this nut off, and then this screw in here that you can use your straight screwdriver for would start to back off, and then what you have to do is turn this either counterclockwise or clockwise to tighten it as you get the feeler gauge in here. And then when it gets to 6, and the 6 fits in there, so I would stick it down in here until it touches the 6, back it off a scotch so I can pull it out, and then move it in and out to make sure it's got a little bit of clearance, like a slight drag. And then you have to take your 13 wrench and hold it, or take your screwdriver, hold this, and then tighten down on your 13 nut here, and that's what would keep it in place. So I actually, when I put mine in, they are a lot on the loose side. Like you put the 6 in here, I could actually probably put this 8 in here. That's how loose I actually have mine. But again, that's because mine tightened. If your mileage may vary, if yours are backing off like everybody else's seems to, then you might want to see. Yeah, I can fit the 8 in here, no problem. So really, these should be tightened more. But this is a cold engine. When it expands, those tolerances should get lower, and you do need at least somewhat of a gap so you can get some lubrication in here. But again, if you get too big of a gap, your valve isn't sealing and you're not getting complete combustion. You might burn a valve on the exhaust, because if the valve's not closing all the way, hot exhaust gas is getting past it and could burn it. So you do want to get it pretty close to where it's supposed to be, but like I said, these always tighten on me. So I go in pretty loose just to get the 6 in, and like I said, mine are so loose I can actually fit the 8 in with relative ease if I move the 6 out of the way. See, it's still dragging on it, but that's what I do. That's how I adjust mine. If you have the opposite problem, you might want to put down on the 6, and then once you fit the 6 in there, and you can actually pull it out, and then just leave them right that and tighten them like that. And then as your car drives, they'll back out some. You'll have to retighten them. But I have the opposite problem, so I go slightly loose, and then they'll just tighten themselves like they always do. But after you adjust that, then you're going to rotate the crankshaft counterclockwise, because you're already on this side. So if you rotate it backwards, you look to the distributor. If you go counterclockwise, it's going to go to 2. So just watch and you'll see the valves move when the push rods are moving. And then you want to I'll get that at bottom dead center, according to this pulley, which will be top dead center for cylinder 2. And then you would check the valve on that as well. And there is compression, because you can feel it. Like, this isn't easy to rotate this crank. You can hear it moving air and doing its thing. So even with that gap of 0.008 that I have it at, which now that I've demonstrated that, I'll just put those away now. First, yeah, it moves. It moves, makes a noise. And I put it in here. Slight drag. And then here. Same. So, same procedure on the other side. I don't need to show you that because I've already explained it, but now from here I rotate counterclockwise again until top dead center. Now we go on this side to 3, check the valve lash, adjust as necessary, rotate it counterclockwise again until it says bottom dead center, and then that would be top dead center on cylinder 4, which would be the one over here towards the back of the car on the driver's side, and then I would do the same thing. And then so since we've gone over that now we'll just go ahead and put the valve cover gasket and the valve cover back on. Like I said, I did. After I adjusted the valves, I took it for a little drive. It drove just fine, didn't overheat. Of course, I didn't go on a 100-something mile drive when it was 100 degrees, although it was hot. It was 90-something, damn near 100. Okay, that should be good. feel that one has started. That one's also started. Since now I know those 110s will fit, I mean, we just gotta tighten it until it's tight, and we'll squash them and ruin them. Like I said, if you're gonna buy new valve cover gaskets for the next time, I don't know if these are reusable or not. The cork ones tend to not be. I feel like these might be, maybe. So I mean, I don't know, if you're gonna order new ones every time, then I guess you might as well also order the new O-rings. But if not, you're going to reuse the gaskets. You happen to have that O-ring kit from Harbor Freight like I do. Put the 110s on. Let's see if they work. If they do, well, there you go. You don't need to spend the money on those other O-rings. Even like I said, they're not expensive, but I don't remember what that set of 300 and something O-rings cost me, but it wasn't a lot. It was pretty reasonably priced considering the amount of O-rings I got. Okay. So that's tight. That's tight. Oh, now that's tight. Walking each side on a little at a time. Okay, perfect. Alright, do the same thing on the other side. You don't need to see that. Same procedure that I explained. Okay, and to finish it off, that's what we've recovered. It's about 3/4, I'm guessing. But before I did change the oil, according to the dipstick, it was closer to the low end, so it was right around that bottom mark. So I'm not sure what the distance is between the bottom mark and the top. So I'm going to put 3.5 quarts in to refill it. And then I'll add as necessary. If I need to put the full 4 quarts in, then I will. If it only takes 3.5, then fine. But that's it, boys. That's how you change the oil and adjust the valve lash on your VW Beetle, air-cooled. Or in my case, check the valve lash since I adjusted it before I changed the oil. But had we not had an issue where the engine was running funny before I did that, then I would have actually adjusted the valve lash at the oil change. There's no reason to do it beforehand. I just already had the valve covers off, so I was inspecting it to see what might have been causing it to run hot or what the issue was, or if the valves were out. You know, I decided to check. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and adjust them now, because they are out of adjustment. I can't fit the .006 in there. And the oil, you know, probably got cooked because it wasn't running right, I'm assuming from overheating, so, from that 100-degree weather day. So, all right, hope this helps. Catch you boys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace.